you. And then we found out if there's anything to add to the agenda for today. Anything anyone wants to demonstrate? I'm hearing lots of silence, which is fine. We don't have to demonstrate every week, but
I'm kind of curious for the work that Andreas is doing in Tamland, and but yeah, he's not on the call right now. But I wanted to see how the command line stuff is going.
yeah, I see he's not online at the moment. It's been some enough this morning. Yeah, there've been so many changes in Tamland. It's really coming a long way quite quickly, and it's quite encouraging to see. Yeah, just to see all the things that are changing, and we're moving towards getting this ready for dedicated. And there's a blueprint if people want to contribute to that, for how we will put that in.
Yeah, I read it.
Yeah. What's really interesting about the getting it ready for dedicated is it's this balance between what's good from a technical perspective and how do we get this to work from a process perspective. Because the dedicated team just don't really have the capacity to be reviewing all of the reports. So how do we make a choice that actually is a good balance? But we'll get there. At the moment, we're still focusing on making Tamland a tool and wrapping up the changes for service owners, which is right at the end now. And then we'll be full on into making this work for dedicated. But anything that anyone would like to demo, or else shall we have half an hour back to do things, get stuff done?
I heard quiet rumblings about a router that was used to access some of the public GitLab instances that are out there. I don't know if you have a demo of that, Andrew, or anything you can show, but that seemed fascinating, and the kind of next gen router stuff.
That was ages ago. And it hasn't really got any traction. It was more like just showing. I don't know what the state of all that is. I think we really, I mean, all it is I'll just find, what was it called again? Stateless router. Sorry, I've got to find it quick. So all it was during the last leadership of Jorg's last leadership site, there was this discussion around like how we're going to route traffic between different orgs, and like whether, you know, what this. So basically for cells, there's kind of this idea of this big stateless router. I think some people have called it the sorting hat. And like when you go to gitlab.com, a request comes in and the request can go to like one of many cells. And there's a little bit of logic in the stateless router that kind of determines which cell to send your request to based on this concept of an organization, which is sort of one of the, so effectively an organization sort of sits between like a GitLab instance and a namespace. So there's, you know, to one GitLab instance or one cell, there are many organizations. And then from an organization, there are many namespaces. So like GitLab org and GitLab com and like all the other sort of top level GitLab namespaces would all be inside a single organization, and they would be owned by a single cell. I don't know if that's kind of like general knowledge yet, but that's kind of my understanding of it. And then like when a request comes in, we recognize it through some magic process, which I don't fully understand yet, as being owned by a particular cell. Like my suspicion is that there will be like a query that goes out, and then the stateless router will do a lot of caching. So it will kind of, if it doesn't know where to send something, it'll go to a service and it'll say, which GitLab instance should I send this to, and which cell should I send this to? It'll get a response, and then, that can be cached for a very long time. And so we can kind of just have this long-term cache here that's kind of sending requests to different places depending on situations. And so kind of we were in that conversation, there was a conversation about how that stateless router would be implemented. And one idea that was discussed was like, well, why don't we use Cloudflare workers, because it's pretty lightweight, it's pretty cost effective, it's pretty simple, and let's see if we implement the logic in that to do this. And so has anyone, I don't know if anyone's used Cloudflare workers at all. It's quite a clever API, because effectively the API is the same API that you use for service workers. So if you're a front-end engineer, you can build something called a service worker. And basically when your browser makes a request, you can kind of manipulate it and do different things with it. And it runs inside your browser. So if you go to like, actually, funnily enough, I've disabled all service workers in my browser, because the GitLab, the one for Google Docs is broken at the moment, and I've asked them to fix it. But if you go to inspect and you go to application, you can see I don't have any service workers because I've disabled them because it breaks Google Docs. But anyway, these service workers, it's like a browser API that's kind of well published. But what you can do is you can basically push that to Cloudflare and run it on their servers. So instead of it running in your browser, it runs like on the internet, and it basically runs at the edge. So wherever the user is, the service worker will instantiate there, and it's like, Cloudflare global network and near the edge. And so it's pretty cool stuff. And so just as a demonstration, I committed to building this little demo, which I did. And this project is it. So let's go take a look at the source. So it's not very exciting, but effectively, this is the interface for a service worker. It's really simple. It's like, if you have a request coming in, sorry, this is TypeScript as well. So service workers have to be written in JavaScript or TypeScript, because that's the API of service workers and also Cloudflare workers. And so you can say, if a request is requested, basically return a response, or an asynchronous promise to a response. And then you can kind of do whatever you want. And for the purposes of the demo, I basically hard-coded it, so there's no cache, there's no lookup, but that would be just the next step. It was more like just a really, really basic POC. And what it did was it said, so basically parse the first part of the namespace. And if it's GitLab.com, send it to this GitLab instance. If it's Xorg Foundation, so it's kind of like Corman's organizations, right? Like, so depending on the namespace, it's going to route the request to a different GitLab instance. It's just purely to see like what this API is like and how it works and everything like that. So basically you can just deploy it to Cloudflare, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's still running. So if I go, so the service worker is deployed to this URL over here, stateless router. And if I click on this, it might still be running. It's been a few months. Yeah, there you go. So this GitLab.com. So if I look at this URL over here, you can see it's, imagine GitLab.com was pointing at this, and it wasn't statelessrouter.andrew, right? It was actually just GitLab.com/GitLab-com. When I look here, this is actually staging. I don't know where I can see that this is staging, but this is our staging instance. Now, if I go and edit the URL, sorry, I'm also using a weird browser. I don't know. if I go into here and I go to, you know, X Foundation, this is now, you know, the same endpoint over here, but is routing the requests to a different GitLab instance. Obviously, I'm using these public GitLab instances in lieu of cells because we don't have cells yet. But, you know, if I edit this URL and go back to GitLab.com, kind of, you know, it's the same endpoint, but it's now routing it to staging.gitlab.com. And then I forgot which other ones I had in there. So if we go to source, and then Videolan. So if I go to /Videolan, it's going to send me to yet another GitLab instance. Let's see if it works. It's Videolan looks like you need to be signed in, which it wasn't at the time. Maybe they got sick of people sending random weird requests to their GitLab instance. And then Debian. So if I go, you know, again /Debian over here, and you know, so it's routing, and in theory, like the GitLab would kind of take care of the organization. So I think in the UI mockups that I've seen, there's kind of like an organization pull down at the top here, and you would change it, and then the router would route you to a different cell where that organization is based. But it's a very straightforward demo. It's really small, really simple. Where it gets complicated is APIs, and because when you make a request here, if I go look at this, you'll see under network, I just reload this. Right, this is going to, okay, so that's not so bad, but just trying to, if you go to a project page, I think there's quite a few. So if I go into here, here's a classic example. So this URL is, you know, API GraphQL. So which endpoint, sorry, I can see you struggling a bit there, Bob. Here we go. You know, so this over here has got no routing information. Like the router doesn't know where to send it to. And so I just did a real hack. You can see it's not even working anyway. So clearly it's not as good as I hoped. But what I did for this, just as a hack, just to get through now, and also kind of to spurn the conversation and discuss it, is to use the referrer ID. Referrer, where is it? Request headers. So you can see over here, every time your browser talks to a server, it says where it's coming from. And so we know that, you know, this API GraphQL is coming from this over here, and I can extract that from the referrer, and then I know which GitLab instance to send that GraphQL request to. If I look here, is this, and then the same with this API request. So here you can see it's got the tags. Theory, let's see if it's got, yeah, so it's got the branches and the tags that worked. I don't know why this isn't working, but it doesn't seem to be working. And that's basically the demo. I don't know if anyone has any questions. How did you hear about that, Sam?
We were talking the delivery strategy and what level delivery can commit to, and especially in terms of the router, does that evolve into a separate, you know, router team who cover the entry point for GitLab.com and have to read from some kind of manifest which says here are the cells?
Yeah, I think that's gonna ultimately be a team that's, you know, at least initially, like, it'll probably be the sales team that build that out. But, you know, over the longer term, I mean, I don't know, maybe it won't change that much, you know, once, who knows? It's difficult to say at this point, but you know, I would probably presume that starts off as the sales team and or that organization with support from us. It's obviously not something you can run in Runway. It's a very specialized thing, but like, it also was really nice to see how these Cloudflare workers work, and they're pretty cool. They do what they say on the tin. and they are yeah, it's 4 months ago, so it's been a while since I looked at this. But they work really, really nicely. And you know, when I'm clicking around on this now, it's going through like the local Cape Town POP. So you know, it really helps reduce some of the extra latencies. Obviously, there's still, you know, other things to do with it, but the fact is we're already Cloudflare customers, so it might make a lot of sense.
Yeah, Vercel rely quite heavily on the Cloudflare workers, I think, for their edge network as well. That's why it's so fast.
Sorry, these?
Vercel.
Right. Yeah. So I thought you said the cell. I was like, are they really using Cloudflare workers? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool technology, and you know, Cloudflare are also very they've got much better network and egress and policies and billing policies than almost anyone else in the hyperscaler industry, which is a positive thing. But yeah, but it kind of like, we haven't spoken about it much since then. It was kind of like it was done as part of this offsite, and demo was done, and kind of waiting for it to come back into. But we really need to have a fast boot. That's kind of we all need to get in a room and talk about these things with all the different teams that are involved in all of this effort. So that's a different conversation though.
I need to read up about Cloudflare workers. That's super cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's very cool. It's pretty impressive stuff. I mean, I still don't know what we'll do with like API GraphQL and those kind of things, and all those.
Yeah, the API is still broken
endpoints.
because we allow different kind of parameters. Not everything is nested in a namespace, like a namespace that is attributable to a cell, that kind of stuff.
We could probably like extend that hack really far. It'll be sort of slightly terrifying, but you know, you could be parsing things inside the API requests, but obviously it doesn't help with GraphQL and things like that. So yeah.
You mean putting headers?
No. So like actually knowing that like API v4 projects, you know, so knowing all the different like paths, and then knowing what the identifiers in those paths are, and then
yeah, but at some point, like the API accepts API v4 projects ID. So that means if big company has a bunch of IDs, is that something we can support in that router? I don't know.
Yeah, and do the IDs overlap?
Yeah. Oh,
I hadn't thought it. You see, this is why it's good to have a demo like this. Like
of
are
course,
we going to say that
overlap.
no IDs in all the cells are going to overlap? I think you almost have to. I don't know.
Yeah, they will overlap. That's just the way it is.
They can't.
Well, you have to solve that.
This is why everyone needs to get in a room and like, you know. Anyway, that's a different discussion.
Can these workers, I should just read up, can they access external resources?
Yeah, they can. I mean, you know, the request that that's
yeah, you were using dictionary, but can you like
no. Yeah, so but the fetch to because it's not redirecting to a particular instance, right? It's doing the fetch, so it's doing a proxy.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just the easiest thing for me to do here is just to kind of dump the output out. So basically copy the original response out to the customer, but I could, or to the user, but I could just as easily consume that and then make another request, right? It's just an endpoint. It's just so you can go to one thing, find out where to route the thing to, come back, store it in a cache, you know. And I think Cloudflare Workers has got a caching, you know, it's got a bunch of other APIs.
You can do most things you can do in TypeScript. I think there's you get into issues where you might need to use things like an ORM because the runtime only has a very limited library support. but there is
you
quite
don't
a
you don't
lot.
want to be like if you building your whole app in there, then then like what we want to do is be it's like a thin layer, right? So yeah, here's the cache API. So yeah. And I think it kind of respects like the global kind of, I don't know how it works globally and stuff, but there's elements to that as well.
The thing that I was wondering, because it's like stateless now, but we're going to have to get some state in it when we want to map organizations to a certain instance. So what
So
would
I think it's got to go. I think it's those things won't change very much. So like I think it's got to make a query down to like, the Rails or some, like we have this auth service that's being spoken about where like all authentication will happen. So that will probably be a reasonable place for those requests to go. And then just cache it like, really heavily in Cloudflare, not have the don't build, like I was saying to Sam, like I don't think we should be building like really complicated big things there, but just cache a lot there and route. But yeah, I was also kind of interested to see like the performance, like because really what you want to do is you want to kind of stream your requests, right? So you don't want to get a request and then go to like staging.gitlab.com, kind of read the request in and then pass the output back. You want to kind of connect the pipes and say, okay, and so that was something else. I mean, it works really well. It's good stuff. And it's another excuse for me to write some JavaScript and get that out of my system every now and again.
Well, it's been dropped from Triple H's or DHH's latest project, hasn't it now?
TypeScript has been
That
dropped.
guy is a big loudmouth. It's still like, everyone's got different things that they like to use. So yeah, don't all have to copy DHH. He's very good, but like not everyone has to build things in the same way as him.
Isn't he also advocating having servers under the desk again?
Yeah, he's
They're doing that at 37 signals.
Yeah.
Planet Scale as well, I think, use their edge workers for which is an interesting kind of case study for running SQL queries at the edge, and they have an API to do that rather than running an actual query.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of cool things that you can do with it. It's very yeah, it'll be interesting to see all the things that could be possible. I mean, the other thing I was wondering about assets and stuff like that, but yeah, no, it's very cool stuff. It's just another option, another thing that we might like as everything kind of develops, it might be a tool that we may use, or maybe it makes sense to have like, I don't know, a big Go service running somewhere in a certain cloud, and we've passed everything through that. Like this isn't nothing's settled at the moment, but there's just one option. It just depends on. I think we need to define the requirements first, and then from that we can go to like what the solution is, rather than going the other way around.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Cool.
No, workers are cool. We need to find a problem that we can solve with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and AI as well. We need to find more things to solve with AI. Yeah. Cool. Have a good day. I think, is there anything else that anyone wants to do? No.
No, that looks like it.
Cool.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.